Yes. Is how entangled collaboratorship is. The purpose of this talk is to basically take all of the disparate discussions that have happened over the months and years and hopefully at least distill it down into what the concrete problems are and potential things to work on. I have, along with some others, combed through the various issues and things that have come up over the past couple of years and tried to distill them down here. So hopefully we can get some consensus on that and maybe move forward. So I think best to start with what we actually need as a project. Here's a whole list of stuff. There's probably more. There's a lot of different things. And that is kind of part of the problem. So the breakdown of the project right now is we have the TSE, we have collaborators, working groups, triagers, members, and more casual contributors. The problem with the status quo right now is you're either in or you're out. If you're not contributing to core, then basically how collaboratorship behaves now is that anything outside of core is basically like a hobby. And that like blatantly devalues the work that's being done that is super important. And I think pretty much everyone here would say that if everyone who is not working on core and doing those other things suddenly stopped doing it, that would be pretty bad. As I mentioned before, collaboratorship combines too many things. We also have an issue with nominations, where the evaluation criteria itself, not the like judging of how like a score of that criteria, but the criteria itself is partially up to the evaluator, and that makes those evaluations inconsistent. The finish line for the person who is hoping to become a collaborator, that finish line is unknowable. And then also the evaluation itself is not fair. Looking at most of the recent nominations, they usually explode in some kind of argument. And in the arguments that it kind of explodes into, both sides are technically correct. And that makes the problem kind of unsolvable in that moment. There's also an issue to a lesser extent where the burden of a nomination is kind of like disproportionately on the shoulders of an objection. We want to make it like welcoming, but in many of the nominations that have happened recently, someone kind of makes the nomination and then it's like up to everyone else to say like, why not? That can be good, but when there's a lot missing from it, then it really disincentivizes people to participate. The things that we need to address, I believe, are some system of recognition. So for better or for worse, having that kind of like collaborator status means something. It is a bit of a badge of honor in the ecosystem. It recognizes that someone has made a fairly significant contribution to the project. We also have this sort of, I'm calling it citizenship, where if you are a collaborator, you get a vote. You can endorse something, you can block something. And it also gives you a voice of authority. If a collaborator comments on something, that collaborator's voice generally carries more weight than some unknown person who is chiming in. And then a big hairy problem is permissions. So currently, being a collaborator controls your organization and repository permissions, your ability to run CI, things like that. All these things we need, but how they are currently applied is basically just a ball of spaghetti. I think these are pretty not controversial, the project needs. Looking through all of the objections that we've had previously, all that I could see, eventually at least, even the dissenters of any kind of change to the system agreed that these things exist and they are concerns to work on. So there have been a few proposals over the past few years on how to make adjustments to the system. They actually are mostly pretty similar. And so this is derived from much of that, with a little bit of an important distinction. If I think that this will help quite a lot, decoupling the aspects of a collaborator from the things that it provides. What most of the proposed solutions in the past, as well as this, propose is separating collaborator into two groups. One is sort of a base level one that would grant basic permissions to do kind of everyday things. And then I guess kind of the newer one, I've just arbitrarily labeled it maintainer, but we can bike shed that later. Other proposals have called it a steward, other things like that. That can grant the less common, more extreme or dangerous permissions to things. One of the reasons to make this separation is because arguments that have arisen in most nominations is either do we trust them to do this thing, or do they need to be able to do this thing? This separation makes that question mostly irrelevant. And the big advantage to that is it lowers the barrier for someone to become a collaborator. And kind of, yeah, removes the kind of inconsistent application of do they need it, and that sort of thing. In terms of, is that a question? Okay. In terms of access to things, we currently have a bunch of teams. We have the test runner team, we have the userland migration team, and most of the repositories that are tied to those things are assigned permissions based on the team membership. Yeah, I'm proposing here that we create basically a core team and decouple someone's collaborator status from being a member of this core team. If you are a member of the core team, then you get access to those repository things. If you are not, then you don't. That's how it works for everything else. So why not apply the thing that is working everywhere else to the thing where it's kind of not working? In this situation, many teams have two kinds of teams. You have kind of the base team, and then you have a sub-team of that that has elevated permissions, generally like admin or maintainer or something like that. This is directly analogous to the potential solution here. If you are a collaborator and you are contributing to core, you get the baseline permissions. If you are a project maintainer and you're a member of core, then maybe you get the maintainer level permissions, stuff like that. Very important to note would be that this is not creating a class system. A maintainer is not more equal than someone else. They get extra permissions because they need them and they're going to do something with them. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily more, yes? Oh, okay. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily like more senior or something like that. They probably are, but not requisite. So an immediate question would probably be like, what happens with all of the collaborators that we have now? Well, they've mostly gone through the more extreme vetting. So probably they would just become maintainers. And then any like new people could potentially go for the lower barrier of this new version of Collaborator. I think that's the gist of this. Yes.
So with this new solution, you have 2 nominations?
Like, are you asking if someone would need to be first nominated as a collaborator and then as open questions? Yes, so that is an open question. I think my opinion on that is if being a collaborator was a prerequisite to being a maintainer, then that would probably inherently create a class system. So I think it would probably just be whichever's most appropriate.
I guess on the Node.js collaborator side, you mentioned that they have basic permissions to approve or reject pull requests. This also means that they can also run CIs, because once you approve a pull request and add the label, that will run. So I don't get exactly the difference between the permissions between a collaborator and a maintainer. I know that in your suggestion, the maintainer could go to the CI and run the CI manually. That's, I guess, that's also not possible if you don't have the release or TSC role, right? Unless the pull request is approved. I might be wrong, but yes, I got confused about the permissions, but that's it.
It sounds like a question of how to facilitate it in tooling. That one I am less knowledgeable about. They sound like they are solvable problems. But I don't have the specific answer for that question. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I have first of all, I appreciate a lot that you are tackling this problem. This has been a massive, big problem of Node.js for a while. Okay, I don't like this proposal.
Okay, what's wrong?
The first problem, I have one big problem with this proposal, which is the statement, basic permission to get common things done, approve, reject PRs. Okay, the reason why the collaborator status holds a relatively high amount of esteem, okay, is because a collaborator can approve or reject or ask for changes on any subsystems, okay? So this means that if somebody is given that trust, okay, they can essentially, we trust them enough to not go and approve things that they are not competent of, okay? And, you know, only review the stuff is a gentleman's agreement to some extent, okay? that you review the code, you look at the code, not because Matteo authored it, okay, but you look at it and you say, this is okay, this can land, and I add my stamp on the thing, okay? And in part of the discussions that we had for some nominations was about do we trust them to give them this ability to approve any subsystem, okay? Which to some extent is broad, okay? A lot of people we could probably have onboarded people sooner, for example, if given the ability to approve things only for, let's say, the test runner, okay? Because it's very much self-contained, okay? I'm making an example, sorry. It could have been the URL parser or whatever, but it's limited, okay? It's much more like, so I don't think this is solving the crux of the problem, okay? Because the level of trust between the two things, the two level is essentially identical. So
it's essentially what?
Identical.
Okay.
Like I don't like the difference is literally like if I trust somebody to approve a PR, I am trusting them to run CI and I'm trusting to run all the other things. Okay. I might not be. We could technically lower the push to main type of thing and restrict it to releasers and owners and things like that, okay, for everybody. That's not a problem, okay? Like that can be reduced to everybody, okay? Like at this point, we have enough automation that we don't need to learn things manually anymore. So I don't know how many people here learns PR manually on Node.js core. That is not a TSC member or a lead releaser. Okay, yeah. No, but this is like the question is like everybody use the commit queue label, okay? So there is that, okay? Like this is so what I think what I propose we explore instead, okay, is to have a system. A system where we implement, we have some sort of code owners already type of things in the system.
We could use code owners to say like a member of the team.
If we could, and so that somebody is like, if his code owner can approve his subsystems of reference, then I think it's much more tenable. Is much more tenable, okay?
Yes.
And provides a clear path of, you're competent in, you have showed competence in this subsystem, so I can give you the commit bit of this subsystem, okay? Yes. I can give you the stuff. And I think that might be more palatable overall and more easier, okay, because this is still all or nothing. Okay.
How so?
What you propose is still all or nothing. I can approve or reject any PR in Node.js. Okay. Which Node.js right now has so many subsystems and stuff. Okay. And I'm frankly definitely not competent in all of them. Okay. So I don't suspect anybody is at this point. It's so big. Okay. So you need to, exercise some judgment when approving a PR that's not part of your core thing, and that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think the code owner thing is a great idea. Actually, as you were raising the concern, that's exactly the thing I thought of. And then as a collaborator, not a member of the subsystem team, so if you have the code owner, like a single code owner who has approved it, and then that's not enough to land the pull request right then. You can have another collaborator who's not on it come in and say, this looks good. And the subject matter expert on it has already said like, this meets the stuff for the subsystem. I think that would be pretty good.
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
But roughly, yes.
But actually, I realized I moved on faster than I wanted to, than I had meant to. I meant to ask if we all agree on the stated problems and the areas that the areas that we need to address, and then I meant to move on to the solution. If we could pause for a moment to say if anyone has anything to say on either of those two things.
No, I was responding to or something. That's what I find.
There wasn't somebody else. Also, John is in the queue. Okay.
Oh, no, I'm. You said hold it down, yeah. Hold it down. No. Like hold it down till it turns on.
Wait, what?
Like hold it
Just
down.
tap.
Oh,
really?
it was already on.
One more time?
Yeah.
There we go. So,
Testing. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So the only initial concern I had, I think, was in the previous slide. If you can go back, Jacob. Sorry. More. Wait. It was the one where you mentioned maintainers and collaborators.
Oh, that's the proposed solution.
Yes.
I want to talk about things before that because those things are the basis that will inform a proposed solution. I want to ask if there's something that I missed as problems with the status quo if they are not accurate.
Like with the current approach?
Yes, with the current approach.
But other people already commented on the new proposed solution.
Yes, I know. As I mentioned, I realized I went forward too much. I wanted to pause.
But please.
So just put a pin in it, like write it on a post-it note. We'll come back.
I've been the first person to actually raise their hand even before Matteo. Oh, okay.
We will come back to you. So yeah, is there anything that is misidentified as a problem? Maybe it's not really a problem. Is there a problem that is not mentioned here that we feel needs to be incorporated?
so you want to?
Okay.
So this is also partially part of the next slide
Okay.
where you were. So it's a bit of both on. You were basically discussing about the maintainer role for people contributing to core, but we also package part of core indirectly, some system or subsystem that are not technically in a Node/Node.js repository itself, but still impact what is being delivered. So one of the points that I wanted to raise, but it's coming in your next slide, would be this difference between contributor, collaborator, and stuff. Is that also not something that is really linked to specific working group?
Sorry, is that a question or?
Both, but a bit of a question and an affirmation also on that being giving a subset, and with what you and Matteo were saying just before with playing with code owner and allowing specific code owner link to working group, you would also have a good way to handle something like that.
I think, yes, not to stray too much into the solution again, but yeah, I think probably yes, because we already grant ownership of a thing to a working group.
Okay, if you can go back to what the problems there. So this burden disproportionately on the shoulders of an objection.
Hi, I knew you did this.
Historically with the project, going back to from when the foundation was launched,
Mhm.
it was very intentional to put the burden on the objection. At that time, when the project was transitioning, there was a very strong culture of just say no to everything unless you are part of this central group. And it took us a long time to get to, I went through this process and I got yelled at from other, at that time, TSC members and stuff, because I would very liberally stamp, okay, approve. And folks are like, no, you need to review this. We don't want this in. It's like, no, let's open it up and open up. If you want to object, make the case to object. There was a history of that this was reversed. That the burden was on the person bringing the new idea. And what that was doing was chasing people away from the project very, very actively. And it got very toxic because of it. And so we intentionally flipped the burden to say, if you want to object, if you're an existing core member and you're objecting, you can't just say no. You have to say no because you have to actually have a reason to say no. And so, with that kind of historical objective, that perspective in mind, right? I think I don't think we should just take this as a surface that, or take this for a given, that this is a problem, right? I would rather the burden be on us as existing contributors to make a case for why something should not happen, than try to flip that burden on a newer contributor, saying, "Hey, what about this? What about this idea?" And bringing those new ideas and new perspectives into the project. So, I mean, this here, yes, I can see how it increases friction, but sometimes friction is a good thing.
Okay.
Okay. So, so I question how much that second point is actually a problem.
It is a widely held belief or impression from the collaborator survey and anecdotal conversations, reading through the past nominations and things. I would say it is pretty well established that many people agree that the pendulum has swung too far the other way. I'm not saying we should say that it should swing back completely one way. I think the problem is that it's too far from the middle. So like currently, someone can put up like a really bad nomination, and then it is up to everyone else to basically catch that and say, yeah, well, that sucks for everybody else.
Definitely, extremes on either side are a problem, right? And we obviously just can't let anybody nominate anybody. Here's a commit bid for everybody. We obviously have to have some guys on that. What I've seen, though, and a lot of these conversations I've seen, is that a lot of the folks that are making the statement that it's swung too far are making that statement without understanding the historical perspective. It's like somebody coming into a code base and refactoring it without understanding why the code is the way it is, right? If you want to propose a refactor, understand the decisions that went into this, so you don't end up losing something fundamental that's required in that refactor.
I think that context is really important for finding a solution, but I think the context doesn't say that this is not a problem.
No, and when I say, like I said, extremes on either side, if it has swung too far, okay, but let's define what the center point is, right? Okay. Like, let's find that. We can't say that, the burden should not be on those making the objection. No, both sides have a burden, right? There has to be a burden on either side of it. Where's the balance point?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that is part of the next step of like a solution is finding that balance point, and first agreeing that we need to find a balance point. Cool. Anybody else? Yes. I promise, Claudio, you'll be first. Not now.
So I've kind of seen in the past, there's sort of vague definition of like collaborating contributor being like two separate-ish things. But I think on this particular like burden problem, I feel like going back a bit to Mateo's point earlier, we want to have people that we really trust approving things. And I know with GitHub, you have the ability to have like, it shows the green check mark when it is like actually one of these trusted people approves a thing, but you can have other people still like approve, like mark an approval, but it not count
Yeah.
essentially. Like we can encourage people to go and like add their approvals, even if it doesn't count officially, just to have a sort of community signal, but still hold the keys to the actual counting approval to a more limited number of people that we really trust with that. And I think that kind of makes that problem relatively go away.
Brian is mentioning that members of the moderation staff, if they approve something, then it will, even if they are not a collaborator, then it will be marked official. But yes, very, very good point. Yes, Wes?
I was going to ask if you had all ever considered decoupling approvals and blocking reviews, because you could, in theory, treat them differently and weight them differently from different groups, right? Like there's different with the tools and the settings and how you configure that. I'm not necessarily talking about that, right? But like, like you were talking about having somebody come in who is not super experienced with the code and approving, I think that same doesn't apply to a blocking review. Like the blocking review, frankly, I'm not a collaborator, so I can't do this, but there are times where I would consider putting in a blocking review because of the design, not the code, right? I don't need to be a subject matter expert in the code. I'm coming in saying, look, I think this is just a bad direction for the feature or for the user base, right? And today there's no real differentiation there. It's like, either you're deep in it and you're saying the code is not right, or you're, especially because it's like alignment by PR a lot of times, right? Which is like got its own problems. I'm not going to go into that. But like, it feels like maybe pulling those two apart might help make it easier to, like, if you could give, again, I don't know exactly how I would propose the structure. I didn't want to get, you weren't asking to get into solutioning, but I was trying to think, I think what was your other slide there? That one. You're talking like the citizenship. It explicitly ties the approval and voting and veto for blocking a PR all together. But it seems like that you could sort of pull those apart, and then that might ease the like trust, right? Because you're not trusting somebody to approve. You're actually just trusting somebody to be judicious about blocking something, which is technically easier, a lower bar to meet. Does that make sense?
On the blocking side?
Yeah. You're not saying, oh yeah, I fully understand this subsystem and I'm approving it. You could be saying, a variety of things. Again, like I mentioned, the design, system design of it, like, does this feature even make sense in core, right? Is a valid thing. You don't need to be a subsystem expert to do that, right? So that's what I mean. It's a lower bar.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are we talking about like the problem space? Because I think Claudio. Are we still talking about defining whether we have a problem, or are we talking about problem solution space now?
Problems, solutions next.
Okay.
Unless we've
because some of the commentary seems to be getting into solution and
a
stuff.
little bit,
and we
yes.
probably should get back to.
I also had a quick question.
Yes.
So like from my point of view, as someone who just went through like the nomination process, so I'm not going to get into the solutions right now, just about the problem. So you mentioned like other projects of Node, people doing very valuable work there and maybe not being recognized the same way. I fully empathize with that. I understand. Just one thing for me, like, so the binary nature is of, being a collaborator is, it has bad sides, but like, for instance, for me, maybe I'm a minority, but like one of the motivating factors was that like when I read the onboarding MD or governance MD, like that once you're a collaborator, you are an owner of the project. That's why you get the, like nobody's pushing to main, but like you still kind of like get the ability, but these things kind of also motivated me. So maybe like this is not the common, idea in people's head, but so that's why so I'm going to get into solutions. That's why I don't want to do it, but like maybe we can find a different solution for this. But I just want to say, like, I think the binary nature also has good things in it, like for people getting motivated and being real owners of the project. That's what affected me essentially. Like I know that it was unknowable when I was going to get nominated. For me, it didn't feel unfair. But like in any case, like I don't know, the binary nature might actually have some good qualities to it. Maybe let's discuss that too in solutions part. Just want to say that for now.
Okay. Wait, sorry. For binary nature, I meant that you're either contributing to core or you're not. So if you're working on something outside of core, then like it doesn't count.
Oh, okay. I thought more like binary nature of being a collaborator or not.
I guess there's also that, yes.
Okay. Okay. Maybe we can decouple these in the solutions part. So,
Okay.
all right.
Cool.
Yeah, that actually reminded me. There's another thing that I was going to bring up before that I forgot, but relates to that. The recognition thing. I've seen a lot of other projects where, like they have like, there are people that are not considered like collaborators, or like they don't have any official rights or like control of things, but they still get acknowledgements. Like anytime a release happens, by the way, we added stuff from all of these people. Thank you to giant list of people. If we had more of like that sort of thing, that like we are recognizing these people, even if we're not recognizing them in the form of giving them controls to things.
You mean like
That
adding
would be useful.
a section to the release notes that says like new contributors or something like that?
Yeah, like I've seen. I think Rust does. There's both like a new contributors list and like a just general contributors list as well. So it's like this release had just like had features from all of these people and these new ones, just like stuff like that. Just acknowledge their involvement for the recognition aspect without giving them anything for it, really.
Okay. Cool. Anything else on whether these are real problems or other problems? Yes, Matteo.
Yeah. Sorry to put Wes on the spot, okay? Wes is a person that is not a collaborator, but is essentially trusted by 100%, by most of us at least, to do the work of a collaborator. So
Yes.
I just wanted to make an example of like, you know, this is like, sorry to make the statement, but is an example of what our system currently does not recognize. Okay, and I'm sorry to put Wes on.
I've said that. I agree.
Yeah, it's a
trust thing, but
it's a trust thing. But like, if you send for a couple of few PRs, we get it. But it's yes. So that's what. Sorry, just wanted to add on the like the current system is not. It's missing this kind of recognition and so on. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
yeah,
Okay.
my question, which was solutioning, which I apologize for jumping the gun, was specifically thinking about this kind of thing, right? Because like, I bet you there's a lot of people who could get enough trust, maybe not 100%, but to be. I think again, in that slide you have like voice of authority, voting rights, like the citizenship block, right? The problem is that's so binary, like, right, as you were talking about with the other topics. And so I think where I was trying to get at with my question was like, maybe there's a way to get the recognition and the citizenship without it having to be a like collaborator, you've committed to core or not, or a trust thing because you've moved the trust, you know, out somewhere. So I think there's like maybe a subset of this solution or this, you know, problems that need to be addressed that isn't necessarily like fully captured. Like maybe it's more tiers or something. I don't know. Like again, I'm starting to veer back into solutioning. I'm sorry, but like I think that let's see, how am I framing this? This is a very simplistic list.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's just a little bit more complicated because there's tons of people in these working groups, right, who are not core collaborators over the history, maybe not today. I think, like, I just remember back in the package maintenance working group, like early days, we had people who were coming to like every meeting who were definitely super invested in the project, but like, because they had no way to get into a more, established role, they basically just all left, right? And that's the bad sign, right? You want those people who were clearly invested and really, showing up, even though they didn't have anything to submit as a PR to core or for whatever reason. You don't want them to leave the project, right? And so it's like the citizenship, I think, is part of that, because you need to give them that agency, right? And I think that's where the most of the problem is that we have the binary, you have agency or you don't. Like nothing at all in between. So that's where I think the nuance is what I'd like to see. If you're going to make changes, like adding more nuance in that citizenship category is I think the one of the larger problems of the current system.
Thank you. That reminds me of something. So we, Zach and I drilled into some data, and about 3 to 4 months of participation is a threshold or a cliff. So if there's not significant like positive feedback or any kind of like carrot that happens, that's where we lose people. Something that, like, if we have a solution, hopefully it addresses that sort of threshold. Maybe it elongates the thing, or like gives them hope or something like that. Yeah.
I think on this page, and probably mentioned earlier, that there's a working groups that's nested under the collaborators.
Yeah.
But this does not apply to all working groups, like for Node API. Part of the working group work is in the core, and part of the working group work is in the Node.js organization, like Node add-on API and Node API CTS, like all the repos inside the org. And I would say that in this working group, largely of the member, they are not the collaborators, but they are legit and knowledgeable persons that dedicated to this working group, and they have right access to these individual repositories like Node add-on API and other repositories, but probably not the core, but they are not, because they are not the collaborators. So I think this might somehow match your description that we should recognize experts, even if they didn't commit to like the core repo, but they are still committed to the relevant fields and repositories like that. So I'm wondering that if we can emphasize on the working groups, which could probably also relevant to the code owners, because they are kind of like convoluted in some ways. Yeah.
Yes, cool. I see we have Jean with his hand up.
I feel that what we have is currently just a symptom of everything gets too much, like there's too much focus on core instead of, actually having functional working groups working on non-core projects in the Node.js organization. Even the TSC was like, when I joined, there was no, like, I did not join the TSC, I joined the CTC. That was like for core. And then like we merged, and then now you only have TSC, which is like, so now like the Node organization is like very much centered on core, actually. So like what I see from this like hierarchy is like, not hierarchy, like from the structure is like, why is not, collaborators and like core and other projects like parallel instead of like, it's like everything seems to be centered around core,
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I wrote this slide this way because there is effectively this hierarchy. And a lot of it is because things are centered around core. So I think decoupling things from core itself. So like not to get into solutioning, but in the proposed solution, that's why I said Node.js collaborator instead of core collaborator, because then you're a collaborator of the project, not a collaborator of core.
I feel like the core collaborator still exists because, for example, as a core collaborator, when for example Mateo requests reviews from me in Node.js, I do not think I can use the review button, even though I like with my core collaborator hat or like TSC hat, I do not use my right access to Node.js. I would not expect the other way around because we do have different projects under the organization. I think we do need to have different permissions. You should not be able to. I would not be expect myself to like just randomly if I do not have my TSC hat on because I will have rag access everywhere. I would not expect myself to like just commit to different repository just because I'm a core collaborator. I think that still need to exist. Like you have different separation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you basically just like if someone has access to any other repository in the organization, you just equally have access to the core, which doesn't sound right, or like vice versa, that also doesn't sound right. Because
Yeah, just one point. On other people, let's say in the last year or so that became maintainer of Node.js, what was the path they took? Did they start just directly committing to Node Core, or did they move from, being part of a working group, then interacting in Node Core, then from Node Core, like what the path? Because if there is a huge percentage of people going to commit to Node Core through first starting with a working group, we should have some kind of recognitions for people in the working group.
So there are basically two paths that I saw when I looked into this. Someone comes up as a triager, so that's basically like an apprenticeship position, or they find a mentor who is already a collaborator, and that person helps guide them in. That's basically the only way that it happens.
Just for some context, in this, historically, when we started the foundation, we started the process. We very intentionally had this notion of working groups. They would have their own charter. They would have their own governance process. They would make the decisions themselves, but they had to put together this process. And what we've very quickly discovered is that nobody wants to go through and put together the process, right? Like there's this process overhead for creating a working group and for running that working group and keeping the wheels on the bus in that working group. And it tends to run into some issues. So we very intentionally took a step back. I mean, working groups are still part of our process, but we don't notice we haven't chartered one in a long time, right? And it's because of this, because the process of coming up with a charter for the working group is a challenge. Teams end up being much lighter weight, but end up being much more ad hoc. Some are run better than others, like the website team. Run phenomenally well. It operates phenomenally well, and I don't think any of us would argue that the folks that are on the website team, they are contributors to the project. They're not recognized as such, right? Like Aaron, my son, he's doing the work on the download. When you download Node, you're using the worker he built. He's not recognized as a as a core contributor, as a collaborator, right? And that's a fundamental problem. It's like we've had this historical problem with how do we recognize anyone not contributing specifically to core, but how do we not burden them with so much process that it becomes impossible for them to function, and it just becomes about the process itself. And I would be very cautious as we go through this process of let's have a new process, right? That we don't reintroduce a lot of the problems that we've experienced before.
I wonder why people just, really take the name collaborator as such a big deal, because the collaborator name basically just comes from the GitHub UI. And if you, for example, if you want equal replacement in the GitHub UI, it's called member. Like if you're a part of the organization, but you're not a collaborator of this specific repository, you'll be shown as member. So why can't we not just call that member of the Node.js project?
So
because like the collaborator name is already like just part of the UI.
So that actually creates a problem. So one of the open questions that I had cited was how to surface this. So indeed, GitHub has a label that it will show next to you for collaborator. Its way of deriving that is absolutely different. It's like the opposite of what we define. A collaborator is an external member who is a contributor and like added to stuff. So like GitHub's labeling of things is like hugely problematic for basically anything.
I think that the name collaborator predates the, like, when they started to show everyone as a member, like that kind of shadows your collaborator. If you're also a member, then they show member. I think that predates the whole, that label. That's why we call them collaborator.
Yes.
Because that was what they showed, but like, it's a UI thing.
Yeah.
So like, if now everyone just shown as member, why don't we call like this umbrella term, like everyone who's like part of the project, just not core? Why don't we just call them member? Because that's what it shows actually.
Yeah.
And that actually matches what you see on GitHub.
That could make sense, yeah.
I just wanted to say, I don't think it's necessarily the name here that holds the weight. I think it's how it's wielded. So like, actually, Joey, we were sitting in London 2 years ago when one of these threads was happening and somebody said, there's a lot of non-collaborators commenting in this. I'm going to lock this thread just to collaborators. That's the meaning of it. It doesn't matter what it's called. If there's going to be people who are going to take actions like that, that's the weight it holds. So like whether it's named the thing is like, to me, I think I'd like the name collaborator in that sense, but like, or what if they're going to change it? If it's still wielded in the same way, it's just going to transition. So like, right. You see what I mean? Like, it's really about how the people who get it wield that extra authority.
Yeah, I think that's a separate problem. It's like, how people actually, like people in the organization actually treat it differently. That's different from, because different from the question of creating a status, because we already have one in the UI. It's member. And if like there's a feature like lock it into member, we can just like have a policy. Before you lock it to collaborators, you lock it to members. At least if you just don't want randos on the internet start inflaming things, you maybe just like, instead of exclusive to this 100 people, you kind of limited to like this maybe 400 people or so, which is like the member.
Yeah, that seems to me to be a great step, would be to have a policy that puts it to member. I mean, is that possible? Actually, I don't know if the UI allows member only.
I don't
threads,
know, but like it's a feature request, I guess. Or like there must be some moderation bot you can use. That's a moderation policy, I think.
I was just checking that it's only for people who have write access, which for Node Core is mostly collaborators and releasers.
Sorry, someone thought we were over. I think we have 4 minutes left of this session. Yes.
No, I guess my question is more in the line of Joey, that it's not clear for me exactly what kind of recognition we are missing. Is that like visible, like is as a core collaborator or member in the UI or something like that, or something that requires more permissions and things like that, which I think it's not okay, but we should be a bit more concerned about those paths, because once we add the right permission, they can approve, they can reject pull requests. I believe we have a policy that anyone without permissions could block a pull request. Like, not block pull request, they can request changes, and this should be taken in consideration. We could bypass if we want, but and the other thing is projects like libuv, whenever you send one commit to the project, you get added to the authors list. If that's the kind of recognition we are trying to achieve, that could be an option.
Okay. I'm just realizing that, yes, we have 4 minutes left, and since Claudio has to leave and won't make the next session, I don't want to. Huh? You won't be here tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Yes. So you can't. This is 2 parts. Oh, there's another part to this. So we have 4 minutes left of this one. So I wanted to give you the chance to talk about your solution thing. Huh?
Sherry, what you wanted to say originally?
Yes. But we also add more stuff. I was an asshole. Just kidding. A little bit. I will first talk about this part. There's just a tiny comment I actually had about this.
Oh.
Which is that by default, I just do not believe it's a good idea to give basic approved permissions, which is like write permissions, like whatever it becomes, to the whole org, because it invalidates the point of working groups and specialized permissions for certain repositories. So whatever this is, please do not give write permissions to the whole org. Does make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what I had to say about this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus, I thought it was gonna be longer than that. Okay, cool.
No, now I will talk about the other stuff.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, that's what I said. Which is goes back to the inconsistencies regarding GitHub UIs and the meaning of what is a collaborator maintainer and why a better distinction system is needed, in my opinion. I think it's completely confusing that we call our core collaborators because, as you mentioned, collaborator by most of repository standards are just external collaborators, people that collaborate in a repository that are invited but not necessarily member of an org. So like for private repositories, or like when I mean private, I mean like in your personal GitHub account, right? Not part of an org. Collaborator is anyone that is added there with write access. But when it comes an org, then it's member. And collaborator will be like, the closest thing will be external collaborator. I know that our terminology came from before the time that GitHub even had such notions. But even if you keep the system to be the same as it is today, it might make sense to modernize the naming just to be more in line with not necessarily GitHub, but just avoid the confusion. Now, it's interesting because Node is one of those very few projects that there was, for example, the GitHub Secure Open Source Fund, where it is supposed to only be for the maintainers of said projects. But Node is one of those positions where it's not just the runtime; it is an ecosystem. And am I a maintainer of Node? I don't know if I am a maintainer of Node. Am I a collaborator of Node? Even more confusing. I don't know if I'm either I have the role and the access in the groups and the CLAs and whatever, ACLs or whatnot, but so I completely agree that if you want to have a title which is for people with write access to approve PRs on Node Core, it needs a different name. And if you want to categorize people that are higher status for whatever reason because of them being long-term members of the project and that they're recognized peers, just call them maintainers. And even if they don't work in the runtime, in the end of the day, they're maintaining Node in one way or another. And that's pretty much what I believe on. You have either maintainers, right? And then you just have people working groups or different repositories, and they're just part of the access groups that are required for those repositories. Be the Node Core, then call it whatever, or be it for whatever the repository that you need access. So you completely disassociate the need of, write access for the runtime is something because you're a person that work on the runtime and that you need to approve PRs. A maintainer is the citizenship, which is like, hey, thank you for being a long-term member. You're someone that we recognize, someone that, we not just as in meritus, but also someone that is trusted. Because I recall that our policy for adding members in the org is very lenient. Like when we like create new, like for example, I remember with the single execution application initiative, anyone that just raised hands, I want to be part of this, got added to the org. And I even remember people being blocked from the org, like after a few weeks of it being incubated, because it just blatantly violated our code of conduct. So like being member of the org shouldn't be what gives you access of trust. Because honestly speaking, we have so many teams and members within the org and we don't even know what is going on. And I think so many people already try to evaluate and redesign those teams, or hey, we're part of those teams, and it's impossible at this point. I think they're requiring someone or a group of trusted people to really spend a lot of time in this. So yeah, I'm not really making a question. I'm just saying that yeah, this needs to be changed, and it needs change. And even if effectively for some people it doesn't make a difference, for others it make, and we need to have an official list or an official way of, hey, yes, these are people that are trusted, these are maintainers, and that they can speak for the project, and that's it, in my opinion. And don't not associate this list to be related to runtime, because I don't think it makes sense for me, at least.
Cool.
Thank you very much for my TED talk.
Thank you.
That no one
I just
listened.
realized I've stolen 4 minutes from the next session. So we'll pick this up again tomorrow. I'll try to incorporate the stuff that we've talked about today. Thank you, everyone.